Are we on now? Yes. Welcome, members of council, staff, and public. Welcome to our first meeting of the fall at the end of our summer break. I would ask that council rise as we do the council commitment for the town of Penetanguishene. We are grateful for the many gifts which have been bestowed on Penetanguishene and its citizens, including the gifts of freedom, opportunity, and peace that we enjoy. May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. We ask that all in attendance and those who could not be here assist us in promoting good government. May our decisions as members of council be enlightened, and may we all be strengthened in our awareness of our duties and responsibilities. May we be granted the wisdom, knowledge, will, and understanding to preserve the good fortune of the town for the benefit of all and to make good laws and wise decisions. Thank you all for attending. Moving on to item 3, which is the approval of the agenda, and I have moved by Councillor Wedebanker and seconded by Councillor Rose that the agenda of the regular council meeting of September 11, 2019 be approved as presented. All in favor? Thank you. Doesn't want to go. Yeah? Oh, who did I say? LaRose. Oh, sorry, Councillor Cummings. I'm going to have to give you guys writing lessons. Moving on to approval of the agenda, we've done declaration of pecuniary interests. Does anyone? Yes, Councillor Steinema.
I just want to remind you that I have declared a pecuniary interest in 1145 Fuller Avenue, and that
very well.
Earlier.
Thank you. And moving on to public meeting 5 with yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a reminder for council. Declaring a pecuniary interest in any item has to be done through that form that is provided every single time. It can't be just one time and then it sort of carries on for any other item that recurs. It does have to be done, and I actually was reminded that it actually has to be done both tonight and then in the ratification. Let's say this is a council meeting, but let's say we did it in a committee of the whole meeting. It would then have to be brought forward again as an official declaration with that written document every single meeting that it occurs. So Councillor Sanama and I will work that out after offline, but just as a reminder to all council, that's actually our new process as per the Act.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Now, council, with your leave, I would like to, on 5, is to flip these things around and move B up to A and A down to B. So do I have leave of council to do so? Okay. So then we will go to B, which is a public meeting, and the public meeting procedure for removing of holding H symbol. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act to consider an application to amend the town's zoning bylaw to remove a holding H symbol from the property at 150 Little Sandy Bay Lane. And I would ask our director to give us the rundown.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council and the public. As the mayor stated, this is a public meeting under the Planning Act. It is for the removal of a holding H symbol for the property at 150 Little Sandy Bay Lane. I'll note that it's a little bit different than a rezoning application. This is more of a technical type of application. Our zoning bylaw and our official plan sets out the requirements that the applicant must meet before the municipality can remove the holding symbol. So I can confirm notice of the intent to remove the holding symbol was given on August 11th to residents within 120 meters of the subject lands, the required agencies, and to date we've had no comments come in with respect to that application. You'll note that there are two proposed bylaws that we're suggesting, that is the holding symbol removal as well as a private road agreement. Little Sandy Bay Lane is not a municipally owned or operated road, and therefore our zoning bylaw requires that the applicant enter into that private road agreement. I'll note that the owners of the property, represented by Christy Lambie, are here tonight, should council have any questions of them regarding the application. Otherwise, our building department has indicated that they've satisfied the technical requirements with respect to the septic system.
Thank you, Andrea. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to make comments regarding the application? If there are not, is there any questions from council on the information provided? With no further comments, thank you everyone for their attendance, and the council will consider the bylaw later in this meeting. So now we will move on to the public meeting regarding 1145 Fuller Avenue, St. Andrews Village. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act to consider an application to amend the town zoning bylaw for property at 1145 Fuller Avenue. The purpose of this public meeting is not to engage in a debate regarding the merits of the application, nor is it intended to be a question and answer session. It is to provide an opportunity for the public to make comments and for council members to ask for clarification questions. To the public, this is your opportunity to speak in support or in opposition of this application based on planning merits, and we encourage you to do so. In accordance with the Planning Act, if a person does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed or an approval given, you may not be entitled to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal, and you may not be added as a party to a hearing on an appeal to the LPAT unless, in the opinion of the LPAT, there are reasonable grounds to do so. And there, I would ask the planner again to give us the details and rundown on this application.
Thank you very much again, Your Worship. I will also note, and I apologize, it was a script that I had given you that you read out. This is also the statutory public meeting to consider the draft plan subdivision application. So we're covered there in terms of meeting the requirements of the Planning Act for giving notice and holding the meetings. So I will note that the notice of the public meeting was given to residents within 120 meters of the subject land and the agencies on August 8th. Additionally, a notice sign was posted on the property in accordance with the town's notice posting policy. To date, we have received comments, 6 from the various agencies, including the school boards, Hydro One, the County of Simcoe, Rama First Nation, and so forth. And we have received 3 written public comments from Mr. George Lemire, Mr. Louis Forget, as well as the Huronia Handgun Club, which you should find in your agenda package. I won't go into too much details with respect to what the application is, beyond to say that it is a subdivision application, and the zoning is being submitted concurrently and considered concurrently as the rezoning implements the overall design and layout of the subdivision. Mr. Darren Vella is here on behalf of the owner of the property, and I'll probably just leave it to him to describe the application in more details. It is a residential subdivision that has a number of blocks and lots set aside for residential, commercial, environmental protection, and so forth uses. So unless there's any questions on the notice side of things, I'm more than happy to turn it over to Mr. Vella for his presentation.
Very well.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, and members of the public. My name is Darren Vella. I am a planner with IPS Consulting, and we're here this evening representing the applicant on these applications. So to provide everyone with some context in terms of the property we have outlined in red. The property has got frontage along Fuller Avenue as well as Pine Grove Road. The total area of the property is approximately 13 hectares in size. It's currently occupied by a detached dwelling that's made up of 3 separate apartments. So it's a triplex. That's the way the lands are currently zoned. And there's some accessory structures also on the property. In looking at what the site is made up of from existing conditions perspective, The site is predominantly wooded, so there's mostly trees on the property. And in terms of the topography of the land does slope from Pine Grove Road towards St. Andrews Lake. So that is the slope of this property in relation to the surrounding area. So kind of zooming out a little bit more, looking at the context of this property in Penetanguishene, what I've done here is, once again, the property is outlined in red. And as you can see, this is a fairly large block that is within the town's urban settlement area, which means its intended use is for urban development, being residential, commercial type uses. And there's a bit of a mixture of different residential uses in this area. The existing homes on the other side of Fuller Avenue are lots that have been there for quite some time. They are on full municipal services, so that's municipal water and municipal sewage. So that's why those lots are much smaller in size in comparison to the lots on the north side of Pine Grove Road, which those lots there are not on full municipal services, so hence the lots are larger because there's private individual septic systems on those lots to take care of the sewage. That's how they were planned for back when they were approved. So Penetanguishene does have a mixture of medium density and low density residential uses. So kind of looking at, so this area in here, you can see there's a mixture of townhomes and single detached dwellings all in proximity to one another. Just kind of, that's a newer development in terms of the town's history. So just kind of looking at the interface of, you know, how new developments are being built, what types of homes are being built in these new developments, and then I'm going to relate that back to what we're proposing on this site. So from the official plans perspective, this is an excerpt from the town's official plan, and the property is in the hatched area. So you can see that the predominant area is yellow. That is the area that is designated as neighborhood area. And then we also have on the subject lands a green area. That is an area that is designated for environmental protection, and it's intended that there be no disturbance in that area that is to be protected in perpetuity in its natural state. From a zoning perspective, once again, the lands are outlined in red. So the land is currently zoned rural exception 9, and that exception relates to the triplex on the property. And then a portion of the property is also currently zoned environmental protection, and the line that runs through so this line here is the line that distinguishes the area that's zoned rural versus the area that's zoned environmental protection currently on the property. So in terms of the proposal, some of you may recall this application was in front of the town many years ago. We've been working on this project for well over 10 years. The original concept plan was for this development to have entirely townhomes on the development. Since that time, the developer has looked at the market and looked at, is there a better way to provide a variety of different dwelling types on the property to attract different people with different interests to the site. And what is being proposed moving forward as part of the zoning and the draft plan application is a total of 173 residential units with a mixture of different lot sizes. So the predominant built form will be single detached dwellings, so it's no longer townhomes as the predominant built form. And the single detached homes will have a variety of different frontages, so there will be single detached homes with frontages possessing 30 feet in frontage, 35 feet in frontage, as well as 40 feet in frontage. And what we tried to do, just to give the public a better idea in terms of the distribution, is we've color-coded the site plan. So the lots in yellow represents the lots that are 40 feet in frontage. The lots in the, I don't even know what you would call that color, it's a shade of yellow, would be 35 feet in frontage. And then the lots in orange, the orange color would be the lots with 30 feet of frontage. So for example, these lots in here and these lots in here would be the smaller frontage lots. And then the townhomes are the lots that are backing on to Fuller Avenue, and they are predominantly in this location here. So the townhomes will all have 20 feet of frontage, which is enough for a driveway and a little bit of a lawn to ensure that there's adequate space for snow storage, et cetera, through the winter months. So besides the residential component to the development, there are some other key things. At the corner of Pine Grove Road and Fuller Avenue, there is a block of land set aside for potential commercial uses. So that's the area in this pinkish color here. There is also, in this area here, there is a block set aside for a potential multi-story medium-density building that has the ability to occupy a total of 30 units, which is what was approved by the County of Simcoe and the Town of Penetanguishene when the official plan amendment was approved for this property quite some time ago. The area in green is the area that is set aside for environmental protection. So that area is the no-touch zone that will be protected in perpetuity. And then the areas in light blue represent the areas where the stormwater management will be directed and cleaned and then outletted back into the natural environment. And then the green areas, there are actually two amenity areas for this development. There's an amenity area in this location here with some visitor parking, and there is also an amenity area in this area here, also with some visitor parking. So there's two separate amenity areas which we're intending to have planned in different ways for different people to enjoy, not only for people that live here, but for also guests that are coming in. So the overall density of this development is dictated by the County of Simcoe as well as the Town of Penetanguishene. So there is a minimum density target. If you're wondering why there's the lots are so small, there is a requirement that we have to meet through provincial guidelines, County of Simcoe guidelines, and town guidelines related to the minimum number of dwelling units that can be put on this property. So the density of this project is approximately 23 units per hectare. And the other things that I just want to note for the public and council is this is not a municipal subdivision. This is a private condominium development. So by that, I mean the roads within the development are actually going to be owned by the condominium corporation, and the individual lots within the condominium, the homes and the lots will be owned by the purchasers of those lots. So the elements that will be in common in this development would be the roads, would be the park areas, and would be the stormwater management facilities, and then everything else would be privately owned by each of the individual home purchasers in the development. So from a zoning perspective, this is a fairly technical slide. In order to implement the 173-unit development, there's a rezoning application that's before the municipality, and the rezoning application intends to create specific zones for all of the different lot sizes within the development, and also properly zone the area for the commercial use, properly zoned the area for the environmental protection lands and the area intended for the future medium-density block in the rear portion of the site. So this is a table that just describes the provisions that are being applied for related to those individual zones under the application. So the draft plan of subdivision is the application that deals with the subdivision of land into the individual lots so that they can be built upon and purchased by the individual owners. And the subdivision also is intended to create the blocks for the parkland areas, the stormwater management areas, and the roads, the condominium roads. The commercial area in the the bottom corner of the development here, those commercial lands are actually not within the subdivision. It was thought that it would be best not to include those lands in the subdivision so that if there was a commercial user that wanted to build on that property sooner than the subdivision, this provides the flexibility for that to take place versus it being included in a subdivision with a long list of conditions that need to be satisfied before there's any development taking place. So in terms of studies, the municipality did provide a very extensive list of requirements in order for us to get to this point. So I've listed here all of the individual studies that were submitted into the planning department. If there's anyone in the public that is interested in reviewing these studies, you could view them at the planning counter just across the hall here. Take a look at those studies and file any questions through the planning department. Those would ultimately come back to my office for them to be responded to by any of the consultants that you see on the list. So there's a long list of studies. We do have some of the technical experts here this evening, Your Worship, in case there's some questions related to flooding or the environmental protection area, just to make sure that if we can give the public some answers, those experts are here to do so this evening. So these are two issues that we thought was very important to explain to the public. The wetland boundary as well as the flooding that's been occurring more recently around the lake. So when the initial application was filed back in 2004, there was a wetland boundary staked and was approved quite some time ago through the initial application when the official plan was changed. To make the application that is here this evening, the town asked us to go back out and confirm that boundary, whether to confirm it was still in the same place or whether it had moved. Given it had been quite some time since that boundary was created, environmental features change over time, so they wanted to ensure that that boundary reflected actually what was on the ground today. So that work was done this year in 2019, the reconfirmation of the boundary. That work was done in concert with the Ministry of Natural Resources. So we had staff from the MNR out on site again to walk the boundary, confirm the boundary to make sure that it was in the correct location prior to making this application in terms of determining which land can be used for development and which land we needed to keep maintained in its natural state. Relating to the flooding issue, my client is currently in discussions with a number of different agencies. It's a bit of a complicated scenario because the lake is not under the municipality's jurisdiction, it's under provincial jurisdiction, so there's a number of different parties that are involved to try and look at getting a solution for controlling flooding. So all I can really tell you at this stage is we're exploring options to improve the flooding situation. We're working cooperatively with the town, and with the ministries on coming up with a solution to ensure that the flooding that's taking place does not get any worse, and look to find a way to make it more sustainable in terms of controlling the elevation of that water by improving an overall outlet. So we're trying to do that. There's been no solution that's been approved yet. So currently, right now, we're exploring options to try and have that happen, which would benefit the entire community. So in conclusion, I think I've probably talked enough this evening. Tonight's more about what the public has to say. So the project proposes 173 residential units in a subdivision that includes parkland, stormwater management facilities, as well as future commercial uses. The development application also ensures the protection of St. Andrews Lake, the provincially significant wetland on the property, and establishes that development boundary. In accordance with the official plan, when you're in a neighborhood area designation, the goals are to provide for appropriate, compact, and functional growth that contributes to the overall supply of residential housing for the town. So that's what we believe this application is intended to accomplish. And I'm also of the opinion that from a provincial county perspective that this application represents good planning. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Now, is there anyone in the audience who would like to make comment on this application? Would you mind going to the podium and state your name and address, please?
My name is Louis Forja. I live at 1029 Pine Grove Road. Am I right in that they're mandated to put so many units on per square hectare or whatever? Or can they put half that amount of units on there? I wasn't sure. I wasn't clear on that one. And secondly, I realize us humans are pretty good at snuffing out environment, the wildlife. And there's a lot of turtles that come off that part of the lake to lay their eggs. Are they willing to put a berm up and some sort of that would work for the turtles, that they would lay their eggs prior to trying to get through the subdivision? That's it for now.
Okay. Do we have someone of your planners that can answer that, or can you? Well, Andrea, leave it to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. What I'm intending is to take some of these questions back, and if we can't answer them tonight, and we'll try, but otherwise there is a report to come in the future where we'll get into the details of some of these questions. Some of them may get a little bit lengthy about how we respond, so I don't want to take up too much time. As long as we're receiving the questions, we will respond back to council and the public on them.
Anyone else in the audience who would like to make comment on this application?
My name is Ed Lacroix, and my wife and I own the property directly north to the subdivision. And a few years back, we went to a meeting where it said it was going to be a senior retirement complex. I don't know if that's changed. If they could tell me that.
Okay, our planner is making note of that, and we'll be...
And we have no objections to the subdivision. I think the town needs more places for people to live, and our taxes are high, so this helps our taxes go down. So as long as they do all the stuff that they're going to do and keep the lake clean and keep the environment clean, I think we're happy with it. So that's all I got to say.
Very good. Thanks
very much.
In the audience who wish to...
Hi, my name is Ed Bennyworth, and we live at 1056 Fuller Avenue. And my main question is, the plan doesn't show what's on the other side of the road, but there is an unopened right-of-way across from, well, somewhere across from Road A, but I'm wondering where along Fuller that road actually comes out onto Fuller. Our property butts up against that unopened right-of-way, so.
Again, our planner has made notes, and we will certainly advise.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in the audience who wishes to make comment? Yes, sir.
My name's Ernest Reed. I'm the current president of the Huronia Handgun Club at 1145 Pine Grove Road, and we also encompass 1163 Pine Grove Road, which is, it's about 6 acres in total. We're not for or against the subdivision. Our concern is twofold. It's maybe the number of units, and our biggest concern is whether or not there's been anything taken into consideration of advising these people that there's a shooting range down the road and they might be hearing some noise. I know that, perhaps in the planning stage that could be mentioned, or in the real estate stage. It's pretty common knowledge to disclose these things. There was a property recently sold. The closest property to us was recently sold, and it was described in the paper as quiet country, residential, peaceful site. And I'm not saying that it's not that at times. We do operate on a good neighbor policy, and we try to keep the noise down, and our facility is mandated by the federal government and the provincial government to have structures in place to reduce noise. And we have reduced our shooting hours, and we have reduced the caliber of firearms that are used at certain times. Another example is that we've had at least a half a dozen requests from our neighbors who, whether they're having a wedding or some kind of family get-together, and they've contacted us and said, can we not shoot that day? And we've always been willing to work with those people. So again, our main concern is just that are people going to be notified? Because we've been there for 63 years. We've got a completely 100% safety record, and we like to think that we try to cooperate with our neighbors. Unfortunately, firearms do make some noise, and the federal government doesn't allow us to make them any quieter. So council has been supplied with a letter from us, and that's our main concern at this time, that are people going to be notified that there is a facility down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, our planner has made notation, and again will be brought up and addressed. Anyone else in the audience that wishes to make comment?
Good evening. My name is Brian Quinteros. I'm 1069 Pine Grove Road, the neighbor that bought the property beside the gun range. The noise doesn't affect really. My son likes to say pow pow, the pow pow, so that's good. Yeah, my main concern is just the flooding. I've only lived there a year. We just bought it, like, as you mentioned, last year, and just the water level creeping to the house closer and closer. You got the sub pump just, all after the winter is just nonstop. So it's just, yeah, like the flooding. I haven't lived as long as the other neighbors there, but yeah, we're gonna have to think of building further up front or something. Just the water creeping up. The flooding is the biggest thing. Yeah, for me. Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is George Lemire, and I live at 2 Shefcott Street. From what I see of the flood plan, there looks like there's going to be culverts along the front of Fuller Avenue and along Pine Grove that are going to empty into the existing culvert system that will lead down into the pond at the end of Chefcott and Oxley. For 20 years, that pond has been inadequate. We've had water over my front lawn, water over the roads. I have been sending letters to the council and to the town for the last 20 years. We have had some work done to it this year, but we cannot afford any more water from this development down into our stormwater system. It just will not handle it. I just don't want my basement to be part of your flood plan.
Thank you. Further comments?
There. My name is Doug Haight. I live at 1043 Pine Grove. Brian was just up here. He's my next door neighbor. And this spring I seen 6 inches of water in his basement from the St. Andrews Lake. He has two little sons, one just born, and I'm sure there's going to be mold in his basement. And I think before this subdivision goes through with all that heavy construction equipment and everything moved in there, that something has to be done with the lake, because it has to be protected somehow, because we're getting flooded. For the last 3 years, the water has got significantly closer to our homes, and there has to be something done with that before the subdivision should be put through. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? There being none, I would ask if the applicant or the agent have any concluding comments. No. Therefore, I go to council and ask if they have any questions on the information presented. Councillor Vadeboncoeur.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question. I have a couple of questions. The first question has to do with the proposed commercial block at the corner of Fuller and Pine Grove. There's been a commercial block at the diagonal corner at Chefcott and Fuller since that subdivision was put in, and there's never been an economic, I guess, justification by the private sector to put anything commercial in that block. And I'm just wondering what the rationale is to put a commercial block at that opposite corner. So maybe it can be used for some other type of use, maybe a medium density residential or something, but I just don't see the need for a commercial block at that corner. My second question has to do with the environmental protection zone, or the area that's identified as environmental protection. That's a pretty significant block. It's a little over 5 hectares, almost 13 acres. I'd like to know what's proposed for that block. Is it proposed to be dedicated to the municipality? Is it proposed to be retained by the developer? How are we going to ensure that those lands remain in a protected state other than the zoning as an environmental protection? So that would be something that I'd be interested in. The last question I had is with respect to the lots that back onto the environmental protection. I know this is more of a subdivision issue than a zoning issue, but in my experience, I've seen if there's not some sort of barrier, a fence of some sort, that those homeowners that back onto that area will end up using that area potentially for grass clipping, things that they empty out of their garden, that kind of thing. It's just a handy thing to just dispose of stuff in behind their unit. So I'm a little concerned with respect to the lots that back onto the environmental protection area. I know it's a large environmental protection area. I know it's quite set back, but I think that, from a fencing standpoint or something, there shouldn't be gates permitted in the back of those lots that would facilitate owners that back on to using the area to dump organic material. Thank you.
Councillor Levy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to echo what some of the people here said tonight. I'm very concerned about flooding. We have existing flooding, and with today's climate and major storm issues, it's not going to get any better. And I don't quite understand what the drainage plan is. I saw two, it doesn't show if the retention ponds, they are? Yeah, Brian's nodding. So two retention ponds, but the developer's planner also mentioned that those would then be dispersed without telling us where they're going to be dispersed. So I just want, I want to see more thought put into the flooding in that entire area, including forget the name of the subdivision, but the Shepcott Street, Oxley and whatnot. That's been horrendous there. When you got to send your kids out with life jackets on to play in your front yard. So huge concerns about water, flooding, and where it's all going to go. So I'd just like to see a little more detail on that and a few more assurances that we're not going to be destroying our residents' properties.
Further questions, Deputy Mayor?
This is probably for Brian. Brian, I know that this is going to be serviced by town services, correct? And so our capacity, we have enough capacity to supply this subdivision? That's not an issue for water? No? Great. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Councillor Rose.
Thank you, thank you, Your Worship. On page 7 of the report, it comes out with the requests that we had, I would imagine, and what is being provided in lot area. And when you look down there, the ones that are all highlighted in yellow, it seems that, you know, an interior side yard went from, we asked for 4 meters and we're agreeing to 1.5 meters. There's a number, probably 12, 13 of them on that page. So next time around, if we could have a reason why and what the ramifications of that are. When you look at some of the front yard ones, I know Mr. Vella said, you know, snow storage and stuff, but we're only looking at a 1.5 meters next to the car. That's not really adequate in our end of the world. So if we could have an update on that, that would be good.
Okay, Council, further questions? Okay, there being none, then I would ask our planner to summarize the next steps in the process.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So there is an upcoming report on tonight's council agenda, but in essence, the next steps in this proposal is for us to take back the comments and questions we've heard from council and the public tonight, respond, get more information, and report back to council on that information and seek direction from council at that time. So I haven't confirmed a date when this is coming. It won't be at the September 25th meeting of Council and Committee of the Whole. It's most likely going to be discussed again by Council at the October 9th meeting of Committee of the Whole first. So that's when to be aware of that it's coming forward for the public's sake. Those who spoke tonight have been recorded, and we will be providing notice of any decisions of Council in the future. Anybody else that wishes to receive a notice of a decision when council makes that decision can contact myself or they can leave their name with me or Darren after the meeting, and we'll ensure that they get those notices.
Thank you. So with that, I thank everyone for their attendance and participation. The council will consider the application and the results of the public meeting at a future meeting. Thank you. Pardon me, sir, pardon me, I have a meeting to continue. So we move on to the 6 deputations presentations. There are none. Moving on to 7, adoption of minutes not already confirmed. And it is moved by Councillor Cummings and seconded by Councillor Vaudevant-Coeur that the following minutes of council meetings be confirmed and adopted as circulated. Special council meeting minutes, June 26, 2019. Council and Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, June 26, 2019. Special council meetings of July 31, 2019. Does anyone have any questions or comments in regards to these minutes? If so, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on to consent agenda, there's none, and moving on to 9 matters for consideration. And that is moved by Deputy Mayor Dubo, by Councillor Clue, that this report be received for discussion and that staff be directed to prepare a report for a future committee of the whole meeting to address any comments received at the public meeting. Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's pretty straightforward. Andrea did make note of all the questions that were asked, and I'm sure that she's already formulating responses in her mind as we sit here. So we look forward to October 9th, and we'll have further discussion on this particular item, I'm sure.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Moving on to B, that is moved by Councillor Clue and seconded by Deputy Mayor Dubo, that a zoning bylaw amendment to remove the holding H symbol for the property municipally known as 150 Little Sandy Bay Lane be approved. Questions or concerns? All in favor? Thank you. We move on to presentation and consideration of report, Committee of the Whole. There's none. Presentation and consideration of report, special committees. There are none. Motions of which notice has been previously given. There are none. Notices of motion. There are none. And we move on to consideration of bylaws. And it is moved by Councillor Clue and seconded by Deputy Mayor Dubo that the Council of the Town of Penetanguishene introduce the following bylaws, 2019-59 and 2019-60, and that bylaws be read a first time and deemed to be read a second and third time and carried. All in favor? So we have a question period from media and the public. Andrew? No? Nothing from the public. Announcements and inquiries. I have an announcement to make this evening, and I'm looking for some probably ideas, supports, comments from members of council in the fact that it was announced over the weekend that there would be a French university coming to the province of Ontario. I would like to push forward and see if we can get consensus that we move forward to have the university, the French language university, within the boundaries of the town of Penetanguishene. Any comments or concerns? Councillor Levy?
Great job on CBC Radio this morning, Your Worship. And
Thank
I fully
you.
support what you're promoting.
Thank you. So we all good? So we then we will
Great
move on
move.
with further steps. Thank you. Any other announcements or inquiries? Councillor Clue.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to inform everybody that Doors Open Simcoe County is taking place September 21st, Saturday 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that is your, I suppose, annual chance to visit these sites for free. This year we're opening up Waypoint Center for Mental Health Care, which has a lot of history, a lot of great history. So get up there for some tours and some information. La Clé de la Baie is going to be open, also known as the French Center affectionately. And St. Anne's Church next door here is open, and as well the Waterworks building down at Champlain and Robert Street, which I think this is the first time it's going to be open to the public to have a little boo. Yep, Saturday, September 21st, 2019, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., all free.
Good, thank you. Further announcements or inquiries? There being none, then we will move on to 17A. And that is moved by Councillor Buddeboncoeur and seconded by Councillor Cummings that confirmation bylaw 2019-61 be signed, sealed by the mayor and the clerk. All in favor? And with that, we are adjourned. Now, do the members of council like a little break before we go into committee of the whole? 5 minutes? Okay, 5-minute break. Okay, council, we will call our meeting to order and move on with our Committee of the Whole agenda. And I would ask our leave of council to move the recreation section ahead of transportation in order that we don't have to keep our curator here all night. So do we have leave to do so? Yeah, good. So with that, I will pass it on to the Recreation and Director, Councillor Rose. Councillor. Oh, we having an agenda, all right? Okay, approval of the agenda. Mover and seconder. Councillor Sineman, Councillor LaRose. All in favor? Okay. Now, Councillor LaRose, it's yours.
No. Sorry, Your Worship, we do have a couple of other items until we can get to that as well. Members of council may see that there is a presentation listed at the beginning of the item, and that presentation is what you will be hearing. However, that presentation we've decided will occur during that recreation and portion of the agenda. So what the mayor is actually going to do is just move that whole recreation portion up. That will include our presentation from our director, but we should kind of go all the way through the agenda until we get to that point.
Yeah, so Councillor Rose, when you get to matters for consideration, that is when Nicole will also do her thing.
Your Worship, I think what we need to do is we need to go through item 3, there's no item 4, and also go through item number 5. And then when we get to item 6 is when RCS section will be introduced.
So we are foregoing 4 and moving it on to recreation councillors. So we go back to 3 if there are any declaration of pecuniary interest. None. And actually, under the approval of the agenda, we have the Committee of the Whole agenda of September 11th and the Committee of the Whole agenda for September 11th, 2019 approved as presented. So we have Councillor Sineman and Councillor LaRose who moved and seconded that. We'll move on to Council Information Package, and that is Council Information Package July 31, 2019, August 14, 2019, August 28, 2019, that the Council Information Packages having been given due consideration be received for information. Does anyone have anything that they wish to pull from that? There being none, now we can move on to recreation. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Wedemoker and Councillor Sineman. All in favor? Now, Dan, go.
Thank you, Your Worship. Under our consent agenda, we have a number of minutes. Obviously, they have been accumulating during the summer, so we have one from the Museum and Heritage Committee. The second one is from the Community Wellbeing Committee, one from the Library Board, one from the Trails Audit Summary, All Things Canadian on our Main Street launch party, the results of what took place there, and the Arena and Curling Club structural assessments. So they are under our consent agenda. If anybody has any issues, now is your time. If not, I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Mayette, seconded by Councillor Levy. All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to B, matters for consideration. We have a presentation from Nicole. Imagine that. We didn't know that was going to take place, but Nicole, you might as well go now.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, staff, and the public. My name is Nicole Jackson, and I'm the curator of the Penetanguishene Centennial Museum and Archives, and I'm here to present you the museum's 5-year strategic plan for approval. The museum strategic plan describes the direction of the PCMA will follow over the next 5 years to ensure that our organization achieves its vision, mission, goals, and objectives. The plan was created by the Museum and Heritage Advisory Committee and museum staff to run from January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2024. In the early spring of 2019, the newly formed Museum and Heritage Advisory Committee came together to start the process of creating a new strategic plan for the museum. The committee was comprised of 7 members of the advisory committee and 2 staff members of the museum. The meetings were held in April to June and were facilitated by Chantal Gagnon, who was our regional advisor under the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Sport. We previously had done a strategic plan in 2014, and of that committee, only Joe Maurice and the 2 staff, Nicole and Jan, were present for this strategic plan process, so it was a completely new process for a majority of our committee. The foundation of the strategic plan incorporates a more concise vision for the future, values that derive from the museum's shared guiding principles, a revised mission statement, and goals that are steering the PCMA into the future. The first exercise of this goal process was to take an environmental assessment by the museum stakeholders and to ask what our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats were. This chart here shows our attendance in 2018 and the different avenues that we reach our audience. By assessing what we do well, we can see where we can focus our attention moving forward through our strategic plan. The next phase of our strategic plan was to take a look at our vision for the future. The development of a vision allowed our committee to reflect on the value and contribution of the museum in the community, thinking past just the operational planning to the big picture and identifying collective hopes for the future. If you look at our strategic plan under appendices, we do have our previous vision statement from the 2014 strategic plan, and it was quite long, and so we've really tried to come up with a very concise vision for our future. And there's some key words in there that we really wanted to keep in there, which was valued, innovative, destination, and of course our collection and preservation. Under values, our values are expressed in our vision and help develop our core, and they will be the center of all our museum planning and operations. And so our new values are innovative, inviting, informative, collaborative, and inclusive. Under our mission statement, it's very similar to our past mission statement because we did do an overhaul in 2014, and we just revised it a bit to make it also a little bit more concise, but we want to make sure to include that we collect, preserve artifacts, stories, and history to promote the appreciation of our rich culture and common heritage, illuminating our past, shaping our identity, and inspiring our future. The community and visitors benefit from the shared heritage through exhibitions, research, education, program, and events. And that takes us to our goals. We did come up with 3 major goals. We carefully selected to ensure that they were simple, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And these will provide clear direction for our annual planning around core function and community relationship in implementing the museum's mission. So our first goal is to build and enhance community experience and partnership. We try to create stronger relationships and increase collaboration with community stakeholders that will result in joint and mutually beneficial initiatives. We will promote cooperation and increase the museum's visibility and presence in the community in order to multiply the museum's capacity to attract visitors and deliver special events and programming. Financial advantage includes sharing costs and increasing revenue. Under this, we have actually 7 different objectives that we want to be able to accomplish in the 5 years. The first one would be to identify and develop and maintain 3 new partnerships. That would be 3 new partnerships that we want to build upon programs that we already have in existence. We're looking at our walking tour that we've already have. We would like to look at getting a partner with that so that someone may be on the main street to include. Also, we're looking at tourism partners when we look at our Tea and Tarts event that we have right now. We noticed this year and in the past, the people that come up for a Tea and Tart, a lot of them have a theater ticket in the afternoon at Drayton Theater, or they're going to the ghost walks at Discovery Harbor in the evening, because we do them on Wednesdays. So we're looking at partnerships in the future where we take in our event Tea and Tarts and we try to partner with other events that are already happening in our area, and that would be another sort of major partnership. Our second objective would be increase educational and interpretive programming. If you looked at our 2018 attendance, you can see that there's some areas where we're doing very well and other areas where we feel like we have a lot of room to grow. And when it comes to educational programming, that's where we really see a place where we could increase our attendance. And so we want to look at this objective and try to have open houses with teachers every single year, we do have educational programs, but we need to look at them again to see why we're not attracting some of the schools in the area. The next one is increase sponsorship, in-kind, and maintain fundraising. So as part of our increasing our educational programming, we would like to create a educational sponsorship program, because one of the issues we feel is that even though our costs aren't very high to do an education program, it's still an extra cost that teachers are asking parents to give. And we know that at schools are constantly being asked to give money. So we would look at a way to maybe get the Friends of the Museum to sponsor our educational program. Therefore, we're still being compensated for the work we're doing, but it's not going towards the kids. And once we get that up and rolling, that's when we would start with our outreach programs to the outhouse or receptions for the teachers to come in. When it comes to our fundraising, right now, we just have a fundraising initiative that doesn't have a specific cause or project. It's just an annual event. We would like to look in the future of when we're doing fundraising that it definitely has a specific cause that we're trying to work towards, and not just something to give to our annual operating budget. And that way, we probably get more success if we're going for specific projects. And if you look at our strategic plan, we do have a couple of projects that we would think would really align with fundraising, as in new exhibits. The next one we have is enhanced social media presence and marketing. For that, we'd like to attend, which we've already started to do, is social media training, create an Instagram account, and start creating more videos, because we know that's the wave of the future for trying to get people to come to your museum. The next one is increase memberships. Right now, we're very good with getting memberships through our genealogy portion, but we need to try to look at how we can get other people to start renewing their memberships. So we need to review our program and maybe enhance the incentives for it. Enhance attendance at our events. Another thing I think we do really well within our town, but we would like to bring people from outside of our area in for some of our events. And we think that utilizing social media and also working with different tourism partners will help with that. And then our last one is increase active volunteers at the museum to assist with events and programming. We do have a wonderful group of volunteers at the museum, but we do worry about volunteer burnout, which is a real thing that a lot of organizations are dealing with. And so the only way you can really help with that is try to always increase and promote getting more volunteers, so that the ones that you have don't feel like they have to do everything, that they can just sort of pick and choose. So that is our first goal. Our second goal is to create and deliver exhibits that highlight innovation and variety. The development of new dynamic exhibits will contribute to the museum's ability to increase engagement and participation and support its obligation to respond to community needs. So that's our desired outcome. For that, we have 6 objectives, because we know that if you want people to come back to the museum, you have to change up the museum a little bit to bring them back. The first one would be develop 3 changing exhibits per year. That's our first objective. And with that, there's just no way we could do completely brand new massive exhibits every year, but we could work with different people in the community to bring different exhibits into our museum every year. And they don't have to be big, they could be small ones in our great hall. We could have an art wall in our hallway upstairs. And then we, of course, would always have at least one nice exhibit every year that we'd have. The first step to that would be creating a 3-year exhibit plan, which would be the first thing we would work at when we were dealing with this. The next objective is explore 2 other museums in the area for new ideas. This is a goal for our Museum and Heritage Committee, for them to get out to look at other museums that are comparable to our museum and sort of report back on an annual basis when they've looked at some of these other museums to see what's out there, if there's anything that we could do at our small museum as well. The third one is to redo 1 permanent exhibit area to a Métis Drummond Island history exhibit. And so through this whole process of strategic plan, we've tried to listen to the people that come to the museum and why they come. And we know the genealogy room is a huge, great place for us to have, because people are very interested in their history. But even this whole summer, we've had people all over North America who visited because their family originally came from Penetanguishene, and they're really interested in the Drummond Island story and Métis history. And so we really want to build a really nice exhibit up on our top floor that would be permanent, and we want to take the time to make sure that it's done right. We want to work with the Métis Nation of Ontario, and we want to work with some of the descendants of some of the Drummond Islanders, because we know it is 2 different stories, but it can meld together so we can tell the story in one space. And so by putting this in our strategic plan, we've got a plan in place on how we're going to do this in the next couple of years. The next one is we want to ensure that all text and exhibits is bilingual, French and English. Right now, we do have a majority of our exhibits in both languages, but we want to ensure that as part of our values, which is to be inclusive, that we make sure that any new exhibits we bring in are bilingual, and that we ensure that everything is 100% bilingual in our museum. The next one is develop a tactile interactive exhibit, and this would be different than our Métis in Drummond Island exhibit. This would be on the main floor, trying to bring in some of the children. We know they like tactile electronics technology, and so there would be a section on our main floor that we're looking at to sort of mold that as more of a history and tactile place. And then our final objective would be research grant opportunities to fund services for either an exhibit developer, someone that could help us with that tactile exhibit and help us and look at grants for getting a really good exhibit going at the museum. So the final goal we have is provide stewardship of our local heritage. So in an effort to provide stewardship of our local heritage, the museum must properly collect, conserve, and preserve artifacts, including the Museum Heritage Building, and materials pertaining to the history of Penetanguishene and surrounding areas. And so for that, we also have 6 more objectives. The first one would be implement building assessment recommendations for our 1875 Museum Heritage Building, because we must remember that the biggest artifact that we have is actually the building itself, and it is the last remaining general store on its original location in Ontario, and most of them have been moved to heritage parks, or they've been made as something else. We're the last one in Ontario. We have the 2nd oldest steam engine in Canada. We have the oldest car in Simcoe County. We have some very rare artifacts, and they're housed inside the building, which is another heritage artifact. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of it by looking at the building assessment and making sure we're keeping the building safe. The next objectives we have are compile a simple user guide for collections management database and collections management policy to ensure consistent cataloging. We did get a brand new collections management system a couple years ago, and when we transferred all the files over into it, we realized that it hasn't, in the past with different volunteers, different staff, it hasn't been consistent sometimes with the data collection. And so we just want to make sure that we have the book for the collection management system is very big. We want to condense it, make a smaller user guide that anybody who works with the database would have to adhere to. And we want to make sure that our collections management policy has also been updated. And the next 3 objectives all sort of go together because we want to make sure everything in our artifact storage has been properly cataloged, looked at to see if there's anything that we need to deaccession, which is basically taking it away from your collection, and then making sure we have it barcoded with a new system that we got through a grant. And so we would do this by sections in our basement. So every year we'd probably do one section and look at it, and then by the end of the 5 years, we would hopefully have the whole entire collection looked at. We'd know what need to be deaccessioned, and then from then we could look at new storage systems because we'd know exactly what our collection is, and we wouldn't have all these duplicates or things that have no meaning to Penetanguishene. So that is our plan. It's all outlined in the strategic plan document that you have. We do have a detailed work plan. Includes quantifiable or measurable objectives, action items, timelines, key performance indicators, required resources and responsibilities and tracking methods. This work plan will be the roadmap for the museum for the next 5 years and will be updated accordingly. And I know that the Museum and Heritage Advisory Committee plans on putting the strategic plan on our agenda. So every meeting we're looking at what needs to be looked at and updated. And so nothing is going to be a surprise. So, I'm like really far behind here. There. Whoops, sorry. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Nicole. It was a very interesting presentation. Is there anybody that has any questions of Nicole? Deputy Mayor?
Not a question, just a compliment. Very well done, Nicole. Lots happening at the museum, and very glad to see that you have a focus on trying to get more people to use our museum. It is a gem, and I think it's overlooked, so you're certainly embarking on the right track. Thank you.
We'd also like to pass on a big thank you to you and your committee for going through this exercise. It really tunes us up as to where it's going to go, and will help us, when we go through budget deliberations and stuff. It gives us a document that we can work from. So that's very good. Is there any other questions? Councillor Vadvancourt.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Thank you, Nicole. That was an excellent presentation. My question has to do with any partnerships or relationship that you have with our public library with respect to matching books that may be relevant to artifacts that people could go and look at from a standpoint in terms of, doing some further research on any artifacts that might be in the library. I'm just curious on that. Thank you.
We have a really good relationship with the library when it comes to promoting each other. When it comes to our collection, I know they have a special collection, and we have a special collection. And so when people are looking for information, we do send people that way, and they send people our way. And I know we have talked with the CEO there about more collaborations in the future.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Councillor Clue?
Thank you. I just want to mention that it's a privilege to sit on this committee as a representative council. This is truly a labor of love. This advisory committee has put a lot of work into this strategic plan. As you can see, there's a lot of exciting work to come in the next 5 years. So I do hope that council provides approval to the strategic plan and we can get going.
If there's no other questions, thank you, Nicole. And again, make sure you thank your committee. That was, I'm sure, a lot of work for you guys. Now to B, we have had our presentation and report, and we're looking for approval that the Penetanguishene Centennial Museum and Archives 2020-2024 strategic plan be approved as printed. Is there any other questions? If not, I'm looking for a mover by Councillor Sanama, seconded by Councillor Cummings. All in favor? And that is we died. We're now on to our referrals section. Do we have any that needed to be added or taken away? I had the Penetang Museum, the PMCC one, the second one down. I believe that is now completed, and with council's nod of everybody's head, we'll get rid of that one. And our bottom one, the county age-friendly funding, we have discussed that at committee, and it will be brought up at budget time to be coming up for this year, so we could remove that one if everybody is okay with that.
Absolutely. Sorry, just for clarification, that was the county age-friendly funding?
Correct?
And the overhead bridge?
Nope.
No.
The PMCC one.
PMCC. Remove those two?
Yes, please.
Just, there's a second part to that PMCC one, Councillor
Oh,
Rose.
the feasibility study, yeah, we could keep that part.
And reporting back. The timeline there is Q1 of 2020, and that's kind of the expected timeline with the results of the RFP.
Okay, so we can realign that one and get that redone on there. Deputy Mayor?
Councilor Rose, just, I am on that committee, the age-friendly committee at the county, so certainly we'll keep you informed. I get tons of emails on a constant basis from the young lady that's involved, and lots of great information. I just shared something with Councillor Sanama, so I will continue to share things as I see.
And we look forward to it. We know it's going to come. We'll prep a little more at that
Okay.
section for that.
Good.
With that, is there any questions from the media or public? Nobody's left anyway. Then with that, Your Worship, we will pass it back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose, and with that, I will pass it on to Transportation and Environmental Services, Councillor Mayat.
Thank you, Your Worship. The consent agenda, recommended action that the following consent agenda item have been given due to consideration we received for information. Our first one is the Ojibwe Landing, the Midland Transit monthly for the month of May, the month of June, and the Transit Committee meeting for May 14th. And then we have the drinking water management system minutes. Does anybody want to pull anything out of there? Go ahead, Councillor Lee.
Just a brief comment, if I may, Councillor. The Midland Penetanguishene Transit Ridership Monthly Report dated June 2019. The latest number for May shows a ridership of 2,641 riders, which is still going up, hugely significant. I'm really pleased. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to pull anything else? Your Worship?
Just a comment again, Councillor Mayat, on the Ojibwe Landing Ecological and Human Health Risk Assessment Update. I am very pleased to see that our director has come along with a report and that it's going to be oncoming. It's something that I've been hounding our CAO about for some time, finding that it's been taking a long time to get somewhere where we'd like to be, to know what we are going to be able to do with this land. So I'm glad to see, Brian, that you've got it on the move, and we should be able to get something within the next few months. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Anything else want to put anybody else? Going to have a mover? Councillor Rose, seconder. Councillor Sanama, all in favor? Pass. Thank you. Matter for consideration, awarding of RFP 2019-23 winter sand material. Recommend for action that the council accept the 2-year contract with D-Car Excavating Limited and supply winter sand material and mixed services for the tendering price of $10.99 a ton. This is something that comes up every 2 years for our winter sand, getting it ready. So if anybody has any question, Manager of Transportation is here. Any questions? Brian, is there something you want to add? Or?
No, Mr. Chair, unless there's any questions from council.
No question. Can I have a mover? Deputy Mayor, and seconded by Councillor Levy. All in favor? Thank you. And the other one, recommended for action that council approve the extended biosolid management contract to the region, of Huronia Environment Services for the term of 3 years. Does anybody have any concerns or any question? Again, Brian is here for any questions. Brian, is there something you'd like to add?
No, Mr. Chair, unless there's any questions from council.
This is going too smoothly here. There's any hit a hurdle here somewhere, surely. Thank you. Can I have a mover for this? Councillor Levy, seconder. Councillor Sanama, all in favor? Opposed, George?
No, I was going
Okay.
to, no.
Okay, well, you didn't, sorry, I was just asking, so. Item 3, recommended for action that council approve the awarding of the bid opportunity number 2019-13 to Huronia Alarms and Engineering Design, the installation of fire suppression system to the Centennial Museum in a total purchase of $131,063 plus HST to the engineering design of the installation of the fire suppression system at the Payette Pump Station for $59,445 plus HST. Does anybody have any questions, or Deputy Mayor?
The only question I would have is both of those items were budgeted.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the Deputy Mayor, yes, those were two capital projects, one from Public Works and another from the museum.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions for our manager? Can I have a mover? Councillor Cummings, seconder, George Valdemont. All in favor? Thank you. Sorry. The next item, referral for upcoming agenda. The following transportation service section endorse the following additional existing referral upcoming agenda. Do we have anything we'd like to remove or add? Can I have a mover for this? Councillor Rose, seconder. Councillor Brian Cummings. All in favor? Thank you. And question period from the media or the public? No? Thank you. Back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Mayette. With that, we'll move on to 8, Section C, Planning and Community Development Services, and I pass it on to Deputy Mayor Dubo.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our first item is consent agenda. Recommended action that the following consent agenda items having been given due consideration be received for information. And number 1 is memo to council recomplete applications for 200 Fox Street, Bay Moorings, plan of subdivision, file number PENSUB-2019-1, and zoning bylaw amendment file number ZA2/2019. This item will come before council, I guess, in the very near future. Perhaps I would ask the planner just to verify when it may come forward.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Just to note, the memo states that we'll have a public meeting on October 9th. That should be a fun night for council and for everyone. The notice actually did go out in the mail today, and so you'll actually see it hit your inboxes as well. So notice will be given, and all the information associated with this project will be found on our website tomorrow.
Very good, thank you. Are there questions or concerns? Seeing none, I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Cummings, seconded by Councillor Klug. All those in favor? Carried. Matters for consideration. Recommended action that the Town of Penetanguishene responds to the request by Mr. Lydiard on behalf of his client, Mr. Freitag, to indicate that the municipality does not have an interest in the subject parcel and would not oppose an application to the courts. Perhaps, Andrea, you could just give us a brief run-through. We did talk about that today, but is everybody clear on where this little piece of property is? And it really is not a need for the municipality, but go ahead.
Sure. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, so it's something that I think I referred to in the report as an orphan piece of land. Somehow, during the various transactions, the municipality has taken over the years and most likely gone back to the 1950s, 1960s. This small component of what was once planned to be a road allowance, Louise Crescent, was lost from title and is not owned by, or is owned by somebody, but not assessed as being as owned by somebody. So through the course of Mr. Freitag and his lawyers' work, they've identified that the company is the Seebeck Company, which is no longer a company in effect. And so they've approached the municipality, as we previously had an interest in it owning part of Louise Crescent, to confirm that we have no desire to reacquire that land. So we've gone through it and looked at it. We don't have any need for it at the current time. It's not necessary for the Lawrence Street road allowance, and so therefore we're recommending to committee and council that we not oppose this application to obtain ownership and title to that. It's very similar to another application we're dealing with about a vesting order to acquire title to that land.
Thank you, Andrea. Are there any further comments, questions? Seeing none, I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor LaRose, seconded by Councillor Clue. All those in favor? Carried. Our last item is our referrals. We have one item, and that is a report on our vacant municipal property inventory update. That is something, we do have an inventory, but it does need to be updated. So are there any other items that need to be added to this list? Seeing none, could I have Councillor Clue?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not an item to add, but I'm just wondering, given the subdivisions before us and we're coming to the end of Q3, yes, we are, if we could potentially at least adjust the expected date for that deliverable. Q4 is also pretty soon, potentially Q1 2020.
I think Q4 is, thank you for bringing that forward. Our planner is extremely busy. Good. Any other issues? Seeing none, I do have a mover and a seconder, so I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Question period from the media. Public, we have none. Your Worship, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We move on to 9, which is Section D, Finance and Corporate Services, and I pass it on to Councillor Wedemarker.
Thank you, Worship. Members of Council, just referring to the consent agenda, we have a letter here from Hospice Huronia requesting forgiveness of development charges. I'd like to speak to this matter, if I could. I'd like to propose that this letter be referred to staff. I'd like to get a report from staff in terms of what the town has done in the past to support Hospice Huronia. I'm fearful that if we just deal with this request on the consent agenda, that members of the public may not have the full picture that what council, how council has supported Hospice Huronia in the past. And if I'd propose to move that, if I could get a seconder. Councillor Cummings. Oh, any questions?
No, I was going to second.
Sorry, just for clarification, you're moving that the report be referred back to staff for a report?
Yes, there's a letter
Or the letter be referred back to staff?
Yes.
For a staff report?
For a staff report outlining a couple of things. First of all, what the town has done in the past to support Hospice Huronia with respect to this development. What the development charges would be that they're requesting, so a value of that. And then a third thing would be, has the town done this in the past for any type of request? So just a fuller picture so that when it comes back to committee, we have a full context in terms of being able to make a decision.
Absolutely, completely understand. Just clarifying in terms of the motion what exactly it would say, and suggest an alternative that the letter be received for information, and that that request be actually added to the referral items list for a report where we could clarify those key details in that section. It's the same thing, but I would just need to sort of craft up a motion. Otherwise, we would add it to that section.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm comfortable either way, however you feel is appropriate.
I think that it's a little more organized and easier to track in that referral item list, just in case it doesn't make it on the next agenda. It is somewhere where council can see. And of course, council has to, of course, agree, just like a motion, that it be added to the work plan.
Thank you. I'll take your advice and I'll withdraw my motion. And the motion that is before committee is that the following consent agenda item, having been given due consideration, be received for information. And that is the letter from Hospice Huronia for forgiveness of development charges. Do I have a mover, Deputy Mayor, and a seconder? Councillor Levy, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to matters for consideration. We have an item from the Fire Department pertaining to fees harmonization with the Town of Midland Fire Department, and there's a report in your agenda package that outlines the work that's been done to harmonize the fees between the two municipalities and the two fire departments. I did speak briefly with the chief, and perhaps, Chief, you could just outline briefly what the rationale behind this was and the work that was done in terms of preparing the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the concept was similar to what we did with the building department fees about a year ago. It was to take the two fees that were charged by the two departments and harmonize them so that people in Midland or Penetanguishene, whether you were a landlord or looking for fire information, would be consistent between the two municipalities. Since we share a joint administration between the two municipalities, it's also easier for Sue and I to keep track of who charges what and what fee is charged for this. So we did have a look at the fees, blended ours. Ours had been several years since we had done an update, so it was, the timing was correct. We did look at Tiny's fees as well. We had initially asked Tiny and Tay if they were interested in looking at a joint kind of fee among the four of us. There wasn't a lot of interest in that, but we did look at Tiny's and tried to bring them all within line so that they're all equally close.
Good. Thank you, Chief. Any questions from members of council on the report? Thank you. May I have a mover then? Councillor Rose, seconder. Councillor Sanama, any further questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Moving on then to referrals. We did talk about the one referral, so Madam Clerk, were you able to capture all the elements of that one referral?
I believe so. I've added it as an item, Hospice Huronia contribution history. I don't know if that's what you're looking for. And then in the key deliverables, provide details of contributions towards Hospice for Huronia, including in-kind and land donations.
Yeah, that, and then what the development charge would be, what the value of that development charge would be, and that would be all development charge, so the municipal, county, and education. Although I think that this would only be dealing with the town's portion. But and then what was the last item? The third. Oh yes, thank you. What if we've done anything for any other similar requests?
In terms of development charges?
Development charge
Okay.
relief, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is the actual cost of that property, if in fact we had sold it as individual lots, just what that value might have been, if that could be part of the report.
Thank you. Councillor Cummings?
Thank you. I was just, for clarification purposes, I think what we're looking for is a combination of land donation and development charges. Have we done anything in the past for other groups regarding this group, like this combo situation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think from my perspective at least, I think I understand and grasp what committee's looking for. So we'll certainly get, if it's not September 25th, which is tight turnaround now in terms of our agenda release, we will certainly seek to get it in front of committee as early in October as possible.
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, with a response in the meantime to Hospice Huronia outlining what the plan of attack is in terms of next steps.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Madam Clerk, do I need a motion to add that to the referral list?
Yes, we do.
Okay, may I have a motion to add that to the referral list? Councillor Cummings, second. Councillor Sanama, all those in favor? Carried. I had one other item that I just wanted to raise. During the council meeting, the mayor spoke about the French language university and how he'd be interested in getting council support to pursue it, and I think we all nodded around the table and thought that was a good idea. And I just thought that perhaps as a council, we may want to have something a little more formal, like a resolution or something to that effect. And I did speak briefly with the clerk during the break to outline my comment, and she had some words of wisdom, and I'll just ask the clerk if she could outline to council how we can formally give his worship some guidance with respect to pursuing the French language university. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vatabankura. I actually spoke to the CAO briefly after our conversation, and I think I have a bit more of some more clarity. I think Mayor LaRue's intention was to let council know about the opportunity, but I'll let the CAO speak to it as well if council needs further clarification. But my understanding is there is no real work that's going to be done in terms of the staff time and resources and report writing that would happen as yet. There's just a very simple investigation, and that the further information would come to council for consideration at another time. But certainly, if council wants to address that, or committee, wants to address that, or if maybe the CAO would like to add something to my explanation, since he has had the conversations with the mayor about this topic, it might be more appropriate.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Certainly from my perspective, I think the intention is to get some formal direction from council at some point in the process. I think kind of and this has just come about in the last few days, so we've just kind of been spitballing in terms of what that process looks like. I think from our perspective, we were hoping to try to get a bit of an idea on process from the government in terms of timing and what the process looks like, with the intention that we will be in front of council looking for some formal support before we go down the path too far. That said, if committee and council would like to ratify and give formal direction kind of sooner rather than later, I think we would welcome that with open arms. But I think from my perspective, the original intention was to try to get, have some preliminary conversations with our MPP, certainly through consultation with his worship, and try to get some more information first, and then return back to council and ask for some formal support. So that was the intention. That said, if committee is more comfortable giving formal support via a motion at our next meeting, we can certainly go about it that way as well. So that was kind of, from my perspective, the intention. The intention tonight was just to kind of raise it for council, so council had it kind of on their radar. We would do some preliminary discussions or have some preliminary conversations, and then at some point certainly return with getting some formal direction, before we write a letter, on town letterhead and whatnot.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. I'm comfortable with that approach. Thank you. So, Your Worship, that concludes the Finance and Corporate Services portion of the agenda, and I'll just ask if, Councilor Rose, questions from the media and the public.
Thank you. Just when we were going through referrals, we ended up skipping through. I just wanted to speak to the Huronia Airport Commission one, the number one on there.
Sorry, Councilor, yes.
And just to remind everybody that you did receive an email for an invitation to a meeting coming up in late September, early October. To see this, it will be held at the airport. It is going to be a 3 municipal group there, so we've invited all of our council members from Midland and Tiny and our council. So it'll be one night, one presentation, everybody at the airport, everybody gets to hear it all at once, and go from there. So just want to remind everybody to reply back to Kelly with those dates so that it can all get arranged.
Thank you. And there was the other item on the referral list, council conference policy. And we added the one item, so that deals with the referrals. Question periods for the media and the public? No questions? Your worship. Madam Clerk, do we need a motion on these two items, or do they just stay on?
A second motion would be ideal to accept them as they are remaining on the list.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cummings. Yes. So if we have a motion that the Finance and Corporate Services section endorse the existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff, Councillor Cummings, second, Councillor Mayotte. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you. And we've already covered question period. So, Your Worship, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Bodyboncoeur, and I would ask for a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Councillor Mayotte and Councillor Saint-Amand. Thank you. We are adjourned.